Hello language boosters, welcome to the second part of the video that we recorded at the Poliglot Gathering with the legendary polyglots Luca Lampariello and Gabriel Gelman, the Sprachheld, on the topic, are there hard languages? Are there languages that are more difficult than others? If you haven't watched the first part yet, it's here on the YouTube channel. You can just click to find somewhere here on the videos. But if you have, the second part is going to start right now.
But at the same time, I would like to go back to what we were discussing a minute ago about Hungarian. So I get the idea that I understand the concept of distances. So yeah, non-Indo-European languages, they are harder for us because they are not Indo-European. But do you think that what really makes Hungarian difficult is the fact that it's not an Indo-European language, or maybe some features that aren't present in the grammar?
So it's an interesting question. I would say that the most interesting thing about Hungarian, or the most difficult part of Hungarian, is its grammatical complexity. Right. True, but if you think about it, you've been learning some Hungarian, right? Well,
Finnish.
Finnish.
And then I'm bringing it up because I have something that I would like to talk about Finnish, but go ahead.
So I recently talked to Stefano. Stefano is another polyglot whom you all know. We're talking about the difference between Finnish and Hungarian, and actually we convened, we agreed that there's a lot of similarities, but in general I would say that what makes Hungarian difficult is that it's generally different from any other language I've learned, so grammatically speaking. But all in all, if you have to factor in all the other things that make a language difficult or distant, I would say that Hungarian is not as difficult as it looks. Sometimes we always hear that language X or language Y is so difficult you'll never learn it. But in reality, it's not as difficult as it seems. I firmly believe that you can deconstruct any language if you really want to learn it. And Hungarian, it takes a little bit more time to learn it, but I think if, for example, as a Brazilian, if you learn Polish or Hungarian, I dare say that they're equally, it takes more or less an equal time to learn, because it's true that Hungarian has some difficult features, but Polish also is tough not to crack. And then they have to, and the consonant clusters and it's tough. But I think that in my case, what the most difficult thing about Hungarian was the lack of comprehensible content. That was if you can find comprehensible content, you can decode, you can deconstruct any language in the world. That was the biggest problem for me for Hungarian.
What do you mean by comprehensible? There's like people that make specific content for Hungarian for learners, or what?
We're opening a can of worms here. So, comprehensible content means that it is something that you can understand, right? Let me give you an example. If you're a beginner, you can get a book like Assimil, or you can teach yourself. There's plenty of materials that you can start with, right? Yep. But when you get to an intermediate level, you're not able to read novels or to listen to podcasts or to watch the news or to watch a movie and understand it. But at the same time, you're not a beginner, right? So you find yourself in that gray area where you need content that is exciting, but at the same time, it's something that you can understand. That's the important part. So what I've discovered recently is like podcasts that are on my level, and that with all the amazing tools that we have nowadays, I can make them comprehensible because I translate them. I don't know if you've ever used Google Lens.
Oh yeah.
Google Lens is this app that you can site translate everything, and I make sure that I choose material that is slightly challenging for me, so it's rich in content, and so that I constantly find new words and I listen, etc. I listen and I read, especially listening and reading is very important. I couldn't do that 5 years ago. I couldn't find anything. Now there's a new wave of people, willing to create content for their own business, and in particular some Hungarian girls who are just building a very important business, and thank God they decided to do that, because I can find material that is going to take me to the next level, which is then being able to finally understand the news. It's very frustrating when you are in this in the middle ground and you're not able to enjoy the language as you should. That's what I wanted to say. That's why Hungarian is so difficult and was so difficult. It's not because of its grammar complexity. When I'm pretty sure you heard this thing, Finnish has 55 cases and Hungarian is 68. Don't get misled by that. Of course they have, but not a lot of people use all of the 60 things, you know, and the same thing for Russian. When you use a language, then you start seeing that even kids can use a language. Every kid in the world can speak their own language well. Sorry for the rant.
You know, I usually say that Finnish is a very complex language, not because of the amount of cases, like 15 cases, Hungarian 18 cases, whatever, but what makes it really hard is the fact that you almost always have to change the ending of the word before adding a suffix.
Yes.
So, for example, the word for Finland in Finnish is Suomi. And if you want to say in Finland, you have to add sa. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that because they have vowel harmony, and we will not get into that because I think in Hungarian you also have vowel harmony, right?
We have we in Hungary, we in Budapest have Hungarian. No,
Good.
I want to say they have Hungarian harmony, but they don't have the thing you're talking about. And with Stefan, we talked about a length. That's the most difficult thing when you have to change not only the you have to
Exactly.
add a suffix,
Right.
but you also have to change the root of. The
Oh, you
word
don't have that
itself.
in Hungarian?
Thank God.
Oh,
they don't.
I'm going to learn Hungarian then.
So yeah, that's the most. He told me that's the most difficult part of Finnish.
Yeah, and I agree. Like if you only had to add the ending, so in Finnish, if you want to say in Finland, if you could just say Suomi and then sa, yeah, that'll be much easier. But you almost always have to change a little bit the end of the word before you add the
It's not
suffix.
Suomisa, but maybe it's
Suomessa, yeah.
Suomessa.
Or for example, table, right? Table.
Katsomerda. You know what
Katsomerda, yeah.
Katsomerda means take a look at the sea. Really.
I know, yeah.
It's funny because in Italian, cazzo is a bad word. It means, dick. But remember Stefano was telling me that his kid is going, Mama cazzo, Mama cazzo. It was like, Mama, look. In Milan, where everybody was looking at them and said, what the hell, Mama cazzo, all the time.
It happened to me before too. It happened to me before. I was traveling with my girlfriend in Italy. Well, she was Finnish. Cazzo.
That's exactly right. Cazzo. You know, it's the beauty of languages. You know.
So I think one thing that is very important to consider is what you want to do with the language. What's your goal with it? Like, do you want to speak it at a native-like level, or do you want to be understood? And then every language has its complexities, but the question is the complexity a relevant one for my goal? So when I was in Australia, I lived there for a year, one of my classmates came up to me and he was like, English is the most difficult language and I show you why. And then he showed me he has written down though, thorough, tough, and something else. I don't remember.
That's a classic one.
And yeah, of course, like that is difficult, but that's something so specific. And I'm sure for each of those 4 words or for those sounds, you'll always find an alternative. And if you don't even learn the language reading it, you'll never know that those are like you hear though all the time and you hear tough all the time, and you will never realize that they are written like very similarly, or they have the same ending but are said completely different. So the question now becomes, if I want to learn a language in order to be able to communicate, if I ignore all the grammar rules and speak wrong, can I still make myself understood? And with some languages that might be the case, and in other languages that might not be the case. And that's also depends very much on the context of a language. Am I speaking a language where a lot of foreigners learn that language, so the people are used to it being spoken wrong, and they're not like, the sound is like a millimeter off and then they have no idea what I'm saying? Or is it I say everything wrong and they still understand because they heard all of these things, like foreigners say everything differently. So that also, it really depends on what kind of complexity are we talking. Like that could make a super complex language actually super easy, because for what you need to learn, you can ignore all the complexities, you can ignore half the grammar rules and people still understand you. And if you listen to it a lot, you will understand as well. So I think that's a very important point when deciding on, is a language difficult or is it not? Like what's your goal with it?
Definitely. I can add something about Turkish, because me and Lucas, we have been living we lived in Turkey 3 months this year. Now we're in Armenia. But one thing that we noticed while being there is that when you start talking in Turkish, like you learn a new language, you learn Polish, you learn Russian. At the beginning you suck when you speak, but with time, like you can say the things wrong. You can say like, "Я хотеть работать." Like you speak wrong, but people get what you mean. In Turkish, that was not the case so much, because like when you want to say something, Turkish, it works completely in reverse. It's a bit like Japanese. Like the grammar is very similar to Japanese, to Korean, but on top of that, they have other things that European languages have, like cases and like conjugations as well, some other stuff that make it very, very hard. So when you want to start saying something, you don't know where to start from. So you speak in English, you're speaking in Spanish, in Italian. You start speaking, and you kind of have an idea of where you're going, but you don't know completely at the end. Like right now I'm speaking, I don't know where I'm going with this, so completely. In Turkish, you have to know where you're going completely, because it starts from the end and it ends at the beginning. So that's that's something that is very, very, very complex for us, because we're not used to that. That we are used to like the normal, or like the most standard order in Portuguese, in English, in Italian. How was that for you?
I would argue that Turkish is objectively harder than Armenian, and I'm even and I would dare to say that Turkish will be harder even for Japanese speakers than Armenian, because the amount of data that you have to learn is bigger than, for example, in Armenian. So yeah, you have that syntax, the word order, but also the amount of suffixes, the amount of conjugations, the amount, then you have vowel harmony, and then you have the amount of things that you have to learn, the amount of data that you have to learn is bigger than, for example, the amount of data that you have to absorb when learning Armenian or Spanish or
even Japanese.
So yeah, I do believe there are some languages that are objectively harder than others, not just distance, but also I think you can take into consideration also the amount of data you have to parse. Sometimes you can have, for example, in Portuguese we have the concept of plurals, right? We have casa, casas, and in that particular regard, if you're learning Italian and Spanish, which are both Romance languages, Italian will be harder than Spanish, because they have more endings, right, for plural. And then, for example, if you want to learn German and English, German will be objectively harder, because it also has more endings than English. So yeah, I do think that some languages are objectively harder than others.
So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. It was really a thrill recording something with those legends. And as always, subscribe here to the channel Language Boost. That always helps a lot. And stay tuned for more videos here about the Poliglot Gathering, or recorded during the Poliglot Gathering, and also videos in general with me, Fabricio, and with Lucas, talking about random topics on language learning. See you soon!